they have a patient come through and they go, you know what? I really think you need full arch at this point. Like there's no other option. Like you need to do it. We can do it for you. And the doctor kind of sells the case based on their relationship, and the patient agrees, and they do it, and they do an okay job.
In my opinion, it really needs to be a somewhat baby steps, which is I'm not going from 0 arches to 20 a month. You've got to have that clinical expertise, truly get trained properly, really get hands-on experience. The next step to me really is that business piece. You've got to have space in your schedule to do the surgery. I think that business piece, but it's really, really investing in that foundation piece.
Welcome back to another episode of the Full Arch Advantage podcast. I'm your host, Gary Bird. I'm the founder of SMC National, where we help you create, convert, and close more full arch cases so you can grow the way that you want. And today I have Mike Graham, the Vice President of Sales at Neodent, and we're going to be talking about how the full arch industry has changed, and it's changed a lot. And Mike's been in the industry for many, many years, and he's going to share where it started, where we're at currently, and even more importantly, where we're heading. And you're going to want to hear this. It's going to bring impact to you. Stay tuned. All right, we are live, and I'm excited to have this conversation with Mike today. And, you know, he's been in the industry for a long time, and he's seen a lot of different things. And we were just sitting here and we were talking, and this is an exciting conversation because he's going to be able to break down for us this morning how the industry has changed, how things have changed, how full arch got started and where it's at, and then where it's going, because it's going to really impact your office. So Mike, why don't you just tell me a little bit about what you were sharing with us before I press record, how you've gotten into the industry, and then how the industry has been developing around full arch.
Yeah, for sure. So thanks, Gary. It's interesting. So I've been in the industry for over 18 years now, and just to really see kind of the transformation from...
You've probably noticed this before, but this podcast is unsponsored. What that means is we don't get paid to do it, but we want to bring you the best information possible. So how do we make sure that this content stays on the air? We need you to like and subscribe. Wherever you're at, whatever you're listening on, just give us a thumbs up or subscribe, and that helps us out so much. I know that you probably haven't done it, so I'm just going to sit here and wait until you do. 95% of our listeners have not subscribed to our podcast. So go ahead and do it now. Don't make this awkward. All right, good. Back to the show.
Kind of specialist driven, referral networks, doing onesie twosie implant, literally to today of full arch centers, treating, thousands and thousands of patients. It's just been really cool to watch. Looking back when I first started kind of in 2006, there was a handful of kind of we'll say the bigger implant players. You had your oral surgeons and periodontists, and the general dentists were restoring. It was the traditional referral network where you just had some general dentists kind of teetering on learning to place implants, but it was kind of this, backroom education, didn't really want to be talked about, wasn't always accepted in the industry. And we just see that kind of transform over the next several years. All of a sudden there was this thing called full arch, which no one knew much about. And you started to see that it was really kind of restoratively driven, and maybe multiple individuals or parts to this, to the piece, the surgical, the restorative, the lab. How do you get these patients? How do you treat these patients? How do you present to these patients? And so you really started to see this big, huge influx, not only in full arch, but kind of parallel, more and more general dentists doing implants. And as the full arch business has grown over the last, call it 7 to 8 years, the GP segment has really grown as well. So now you've got general dentists who are kind of doing from A to Z. You've got surgeons, or specialists doing it from A to Z. You've got specialists with referral network. I mean, it's a little bit convoluted, and I think people are trying to find
and then you have
place.
Full arch centers that's all they do. So I kind of look at that's, maybe we'll start the conversation there, because I kind of look at the market in 3 ways. You got the GP offices that kind of do the whole thing end to end, but they do a bunch of other stuff too. And then you have the oral surgeons who typically don't do it and they can, but they don't. And then they do the full arch part, and then they refer out the restorative. And then you have the full arch centers, which is like all they do. They don't do anything else. And that's starting to change a little bit because of different things. But is that kind of how you see the market right now?
Yep, for sure. And obviously you start looking at what we call the full arch center, and they've taken everything in-house, and they've taken total control from A to Z, including marketing, including lab, everything, and they've had control. I think the problem that we're now seeing, I think it's kind of coming back a little bit, is you get more and more and more players in full arch, but they aren't ready to truly be in the full arch game. And now you're starting to see the complications. You're starting to see the blaming of the marketing. You're starting to see, unhappy patients or redos. And, there's a lot of things that I think are kind of reeling some people back in. And I think that we're really at an inflection point as an industry to make sure that we are set up properly, kind of have the proper foundation to be able to scale and continue to take care of patients.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point and a really good talking point that we can focus on, because I've done probably 3 or 4 shows with dentists who their whole business, the whole thing, was around them doing redos. Meaning they're like, yeah, I do 15 arches a month. I do 10 arches a month. And I'm like, where do you get those? And they're patients who were burnt by dentists who didn't do it the right way, didn't know what they were doing up front. And then I'm redoing it. And it's sad because these guys are paying another $20,000, $30,000 or more to fix their problem again the second time, 4 or 5 years later. But that's a whole industry in itself. It's just redos at this point.
And that, again, it's like the more and more lectures you go to, the more and more you hear that of, winter is coming, and a lot of these redos are going to come back, and they may not be your own, right? And so somebody shows up in your office, looking for a redo, and it's like, what do I do? Should I treat them? Should I touch it? Should I not? How much do I charge? And so there's a lot of, kind of a lot of moving parts as well.
And it's kind of uncharted, right? Like there's some people doing it, but it's not. It's kind of like when we first started in full arch, where there wasn't all the guidelines and all, this is like the consensus of here's how you should approach this problem. And it's kind of like we're starting over with that again because of there's so many people dabbling in it. I'll say that. For sure. And more. And again, listen, I mean, you're talking about, $25,000 or $50,000 cases. And, from a production standpoint, it sounds good. But if you don't have that proper foundation, you're not going to be profitable. You're only going to, create a mess for yourself and others. And so I think really, and as it relates to Neodent, and we are, one of the leaders in the full arch space, is making sure that we are properly preparing, our customers and our clinicians through education, through business, through marketing, things like that. We are trying to help them succeed. We don't want to just sell them, hey, here are some implants and a kit, go do full arch. And I think that's let's
our
be honest,
responsibility.
There's a lot of people in the full arch space that are just like, yep, come pay me $10,000, $20,000, $30,000, whether it's operationally, whether it's, on the clinical side, whether it's on the equipment side, whether it's on the operational side and the marketing side, whatever it may be. And you're like, oh, this is the answer. But it's not a lot of the time. And sometimes it's the fault of the vendor, and sometimes it's the fault of the dental office, because, and this is where I would kind of like to go with this conversation, full arch is unlike anything else that's been added to the GP offices because it's binary, meaning in the GP world, and this is a lot of the people who are adding full arch that are really going through the most pain, is in the past, when you're adding some kind of treatment to your office, the name of the game for GP is it's a recurring business model. All you're trying to do is just keep the patient there, coming back to hygiene. And as long as they come back to hygiene, eventually you'll get all the treatment, right? You'll get the implant, you'll get the aligners, you'll get the referral, you'll get the crown, you'll get the whatever, right? And so that's always been the model. And so it's just survive and advance, right? Just keep the patient coming back to those hygiene appointments. In full arch, it's binary, meaning it's not singles and doubles that you're hitting. You're either hitting a home run or you're striking out.
Yep.
And even selling a case sometimes could be striking out because you end up doing the case and you have to redo the case.
You probably shouldn't have.
And you probably shouldn't have done the case, and you have to redo the case. And now this patient's really upset, and now you're in this world of mess, and then you have to hire someone to come in and help you with the case, and you're losing money, and your team's frustrated. And the reason for that is because each step of the full arch process has to be clearly denoted, and you have to have victory in that step of the process, plus every other step, or else you'll fail miserably. Meaning, okay, so your marketing has to be dialed in. But if you just have marketing dialed in and you don't have the person managing all the leads dialed in, then your marketing failed, even if it's perfect marketing. And then if you have the perfect marketing and you have the perfect person managing your leads and scheduling those leads, but the person presenting the treatment doesn't know what they're doing, then everything else failed. And it was just a big fat waste of money. And the same thing can be said again and again, all the way through the process until the patient's happy 5 years later with their treatment still, right? Like all of that is true. So as you've kind of seen this industry develop, how do you see each step in that, and what can people do to really make sure that they're ready?
Yeah. Yep. So it's actually, it's a great point. And, I joke around sometimes with clinicians and I say, just because you can place 4 single implants doesn't mean that you can put 4 implants in the mandible and a full arch case. It doesn't just translate that easy. Same kind of thing from a staff standpoint. You can't have your staff member cleaning instruments, at noon and at 12:30 presenting a $50,000 treatment. And so it really is, it's not transferable, but you take each bit and piece and put it together. So you're talking about kind of the business of full arch. You're talking about the clinical piece, right? The clinical education of full arch. You're talking about team training, right? Getting your team being able to kind of present to patients and understand the full realm of full arch. And then lastly, that marketing piece. And I think that's the part, Gary, you were speaking of, is I think sometimes we work backwards, which is I can place implants. My team is really fired up about, full arch. Let me go spend a bunch of money on marketing. And then when that doesn't translate into me being a full arch center, I blame the marketing. When really, it's one of the 4 and many times multiple steps of the 4, pillars where a practice would fail. So, I think it's so encompassing of kind of those 4 pillars that if you don't have all of them, you've got none, right? It's a little bit like all on 4, right? You have to have 4 implants. If you lose one,
if one of the implants fails, you're in trouble.
Yeah, right. So, by the way, I just made that up on the fly. That's actually pretty good, right?
That's really good. You should. That's a whole presentation.
So again, kind of the 4 pillars. You need all 4 pillars in place and foundationally be prepared to then go into the world of full arch
at the same time. And that's the big difference, right? So if you, the red herring that I see a lot of, especially GP offices, Chase, but I see it in oral surgeon's office as well, is that they have a patient come through. They've known him for 27 years, right? It's Betty, who's been coming to their office forever. And they go, you know what? I really think you need full arch at this point. Like there's no other option. Like you need to do it. We can do it for you. And the doctor kind of sells the case based on their relationship. And the patient agrees, and they do it, and they do an okay job, and everything seems to work, and the patient's happy, and they're happy, and they go, all right, time to start spending $25,000 a month on marketing. You're not, you just have one of the pillars. You cannot just then go to the end, because again, going back to marketing, and that's what I know the best, but just working in this, you kind of have to learn all of it, or else you're not going to be good at your job, no matter what part you're in. Going back to the marketing, is if you're doing $25,000 in marketing spend, you're going to probably generate 400, 500 leads. Who's going to manage those leads? And you say, well, I'll hire the marketing company will do it. Great. Who's scheduling those leads, and how does your scheduling work for those 500 leads? And then how do you deal with cancellations? Because 40, 50% of them just are going to cancel or no show. So how are you doing that with the doctor schedule and not losing money on your GP side, right? Like, how are you going to begin to work through this problem? And so in your experience, when somebody gets to that point and they say, okay, I'm going to, I've done a couple of referrals and I feel comfortable with it, and now I want to start marketing, or I want to start growing, what's the next step do you usually recommend? Are you recommending that they do a little bit of marketing? Because and here's the tricky part, and this is the other side of the coin. I'll play devil's advocate against myself. The hard part is like, well, you're going to hire a person to manage the leads, and you're going to hire a sales person. But if you don't have opportunities coming through the pipeline, you can't really train them either. So how do you kind of look at it and solve that problem?
I think that's probably the silver bullet that everyone is really looking for. I think it's, in my opinion, it really needs to be a somewhat baby steps, right? Which is, I'm not going from 0 arches to 20 a month. I think it really is. I think you've got to have, that clinical expertise, truly get trained properly, really get hands-on experience. I think that's important from a clinical standpoint. the next step to me really is that business piece. And you kind of touched on it, you sort of flew over it, because to you and I think it's pretty basic. I think to a lot of offices, they think they've got it, which is, you need to have space in your, in your schedule just to have the consult. Then you got to have space in your schedule to do the surgery. Like, what day are you doing that? And you've got to, and then, when the patient comes back, where am I putting them in that schedule? I think that business piece, and there are a million different places that you can go. Certainly at Neodent, we've got some partners and some education type courses that we provide, but it's really, really investing in that foundation piece. I think that's the key, right? Because again, you talk to every marketing company and you literally live this every day. The first person who gets blamed is the marketing company.
Of course, yeah.
Right?
It's always marketing's fault. It's easy, and I get why. It's easy to blame. They go, "Oh, you're sending us shoppers. They're not qualified." It's like, bro, everybody's a shopper. Yes. Everyone, no one's coming in and not being a shopper. Really, what the dentist is saying, and they don't know how to articulate it, is they want Betty that we just talked about, that trusts them, that knows them, and is going to say yes very easily. That you don't really need a salesperson to really be able to sell the treatment. They want that, but the problem with that is that's a referral. You referred it to yourself, yep. And the trust was built and transferred over 5 years or 10 years. And same thing with the oral surgeons. They're like, no, we're great on the phones. We close almost all of our cases. We do an amazing job. My team's really ready for this. And it's like, no. The referring doctor closed them yep. on you. Yep. You didn't actually do anything. You're just shuffling papers, and rightfully so. Like, you need to be able to do that, but that's a totally different skill set than wowing a patient who has 10 other options. The other thing that they often miss is that when they're getting these referrals, they're the only option that they're given. So they're like, "Hey, you need to go see Dr. Mike. He's amazing. You're going to love him. I've referred 20 patients over there, and he's done a great job with all of them. Just go there. He'll take care of you." They're like, "Okay." And you're transferring that trust, where once you start doing marketing, there is no trust, and they're comparing you against 10, 15, 20 other doctors, and your team has to be able to explain value. And that's, oral surgeons really struggle with that. So they try to do the direct to consumer thing, and they're like, it doesn't work. And it's like, no, it does work, but there's infrastructure that you have to add.
Yeah. I think it's just key that, if you're going into this space, in my opinion, you need to be all in. You need to make some investments up front. And one of those first investments is on your team. Because if you don't have the proper team around you that is prepared to handle all of these things that we've talked about, you're setting yourself up for failure. However, to your point, it's like, well, I don't have any leads in here yet. Why am I going to spend money training my team? Well, if you don't train them, you might as well not have any leads.
Yeah, it's chicken and egg, but I think it does solve itself, because it's like, you got to have the team to be able to train them, and then shortly thereafter, you need to start generating some leads so that they can start getting reps. And that's the other tricky thing that I've seen in dental as well, is like, you work for an organization, I own a company, right? And you're a head of sales, right? So how do salespeople get better? Salespeople get better by getting reps in and then reviewing those reps and saying, "Hey, let's look at the call. Let's listen to the call. And here, you did a really good job at this, but you didn't hit this point. It's training, right?" Yep. And it's like repetition. Every single organization out there, I don't care if it's Neodent or my company or any company out there, HubSpot, any company in dental, any company anywhere. But in dental, because sales is an ugly word, you're not allowed to say sales. So you're not allowed to say sales training for sure. And then on top of that, no one's comfortable reviewing the presentations. Like, the doctors actually fight you. I've seen this firsthand. Like, no, that we don't have to review. It's like, how are you going to get better?
Yeah, it's the old fashioned role play, in the sales environment. It's the same thing. Role playing the treatment plan, or role playing answering that incoming call, or and providing feedback. Absolutely, got to get reps. The more you do it, the better you get.
So I know you guys have an event coming up that but touches on a lot of these things. Can you go over that and what you guys are going to be going over and why someone should care about it?
Yeah, for sure. So we've got our annual Neodent Symposium, which is September 12th through the 14th in beautiful sunny San Diego, California at the Hilton Bayfront Hotel there. And really the theme of it is the Neodent Symposium All In. And it really is all in on all things Neodent. Obviously, yes, we've been, one of the leaders in the full arch space for the last several years. However, because of the fact that, part of the Straumann Group, and we kind of talk about the power of the Straumann Group, we want to incorporate everything, whether it's, implants from, singles, overdentures, all the way to the advanced full arch. We've got topics on digital workflows, obviously, leading with a digital mindset. We've got business, marketing, finance, a lot of other pieces that kind of incorporate that, team training, lab topics, a lot of different things. And we've got 27 speakers, on literally all topics related to the implant industry. So we're very excited about it. In typical Neodent fashion and the Neodent culture and vibe, we've got a great party on Friday night, which is the Neodent All Inferno Purple Disco party on Friday night, which we incorporate some fun and a networking opportunity for all the doctors and staff to network amongst each other. So we're excited about the event. We think it's going to be great, and we would love for listeners to join.
Who's it target towards? Like, what kind of dentist would say, "Hey, I should go to this"? Is this for the guys that are just thinking about adding full arch, the guys that are already doing it? Is it for everybody? Who's this going to benefit?
Yeah, great. It's a great question, Gary. I think early on, in the Neodent Symposium days, it was really geared towards full arch, and we have realized as our customer base has grown, there's something there for everyone. Literally, I'm just new to implants. I'm an expert in implants, but new to full arch and full arch centers and everything in between. So there is a little something for everybody.
Okay, great. And then if I'm a dentist and I'm going to this, what are my takeaways? Like, obviously you guys have a job to do, right? Your job is to convince people to use your implant systems, but you understand that there's a lot more that goes into using your implant systems. And some if it was just easy, like, here, just buy this and then everything solves all your problems. But this whole full arch thing, as we just spent the last 20 minutes talking about, it's a lot harder than that. So as I come to this kind of event, what am I walking away with? Am I walking away with skills? Am I walking away with meeting the right people that are going to be able to help me to get me where to go? A combination of that. Kind of walk me through somebody who's I've never been to a Neodent event, so I would love to kind of get an understanding, but especially for our audience, the clinical folks.
Yeah, for sure. I think the biggest takeaway, in my opinion, because I could talk to 100 attendees and I would get 100 different feedback, right, from each one. Here's the power of the Neodent Symposium. Is being the leaders in full arch, you are surrounding yourself with clinicians that have gone through the good, bad, and ugly. And that networking piece is just simply unmatched. So yes, you're going to be able to sit in lectures. Yes, there's workshops. You can kind of pick whichever area you want to go to. No symposium is going to, every single lecture you're going to love and take a 1,000 takeaways. But if you can take away kind of two things, either some things that you can incorporate into your practice on Monday and say, I can take this and I can put it into practice. Or two, I can network and I can develop a relationship, whether that is with another clinician, whether that's with a sponsor, whether that's with a Neodent sales rep, whatever that is, where I can then take that relationship and help my practice go to the next level. I think that's a win. And I think it's definitely worth your time.
Awesome. And then what are your, do you want to give all the dates and all that stuff? Like where do people go? How can they sign up? How can people get connected with this event?
Yeah, for sure. So again, it's coming up soon, September 12th through the 14th. There's actually a full digital workflow workshop on Thursday, the 12th, it is sold out by Dr. Ryan Dunlop and Full Arch Masters. Yep. So that one is already sold out. And then lectures, kind of main podium lectures, breakouts, and tech pods are going to be that Friday, Saturday. Anybody can get information just simply visiting neodent.us/symposium. So again, that's neodent.us/symposium.
Awesome. Well, great job today. I really appreciate you coming on, sharing your experience and what you're seeing out there, and happy to get the word out about what you guys are doing. So, Mike, thanks so much for coming on, and I look forward to doing this again. Maybe we can do this again and cover some other topics.
Awesome. Thanks, Gary. Appreciate you having me.